If you've ever watched Suits and thought, yes, that is the career for me, this episode is for you. My guest today is Arj Puveendran, a partner at Thomsons, one of Australia's leading law firms. And he's here to tell you what the job is actually like and whether any of it looks like what you've seen on TV.
Welcome, Arj, to the 20-Minute Career. It's great to have you here today to demystify a little bit about the legal profession.
Hi, Jane. Very excited to be here. So it's nice to take a bit of time out of work to just have this little conversation. Thank you.
Law is a very popular profession. What was it that you found appealing about the career, and how did you actually get into it?
Yeah, great. In many ways, when I look back, I don't really know what is the clinching factor that led me into the law. But I think from a very young age, I knew that I wanted to be in this area. I mean, I was always a reader. I watched legal TV shows, even when I was young. My uncle is a lawyer, and law just seemed to be this profession, vocation that inspired me. I think that was probably before I even understood what the law actually even meant. I was reading probably ahead of my time, greater literature, etc. And some of that probably referred to things like lawyers. And I found all of that very fascinating. I did have a challenge, though. When I was in my latter years in high school, my parents strongly encouraged me to think about diversifying my options. I come from a Sri Lankan Tamil family, and so there's a lot of general expectations around what we might want to pursue, and medicine is often considered to be a stable and safe career path. Long story short, I ended up getting offers of medicine by the end of my year 12. So then I had immense pressure, and that wasn't just from my immediate family, but also extended family and extended community members and friends who would come up to me at weddings or functions and just say, oh, well, I heard this happened to you and you should totally do medicine. But I think that process really affirmed for me that I wanted to study law. And so I really made a big decision to tell my parents, oh, I think I'm going to go ahead with law. And I decided to pursue that. I think a lot of it then became really affirming why I did law. And it was because of natural inclinations. I just enjoyed engaging with writing, critical thinking from a reading perspective, understanding how the law had evolved and the kind of implications it had in people's day-to-day lives and the multifaceted aspects of the law. Because once I'd started law school, I actually went to Monash University and I deferred my position in medicine for a year or two, I think. So I was always questioning
Just
it, but
in
then it was
case.
great, just in case. Because I had this, I had a couple of offers, but I got one that was attached to a scholarship. So again, it was like, why would you reject a scholarship for medicine? I therefore deferred the place just in the case that I had made the wrong decision. But I really, in my heart of hearts, knew. And in some ways, I wish I had just cut off all those other options and just gone ahead with that instinct. Because I'd spent a lot of deep diving down this idea of why am I wanting to do law? But as I studied subjects, I mean, I don't think, it was easy in any way, and university is a whole new experience, but it affirmed for me why I did the law. I found it interesting to really delve into the details of criminal cases and then property law and all these other areas. So that's probably what took me into studying law.
You mentioned part of what's helped formulate your idea on law as a career is from watching TV. My son wants to be a lawyer because he thinks that he's going to be Harvey Specter. But what do you do really day to day? And is the reality of law, is there any connection to what you see in TV?
Yeah. So, I mean, I get asked this question a fair bit. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think a lot of lawyers love watching legal TV shows, and there's parts of our day-to-day lives that we see in those legal TV shows that probably attracts us to them. But at the end of the day, they are fictionalized. You don't suddenly receive a case on one day and then walk into court the next day on most occasions. But there are some instances where that happens, and then you suddenly get excited. Where, for example, I had a situation a few years ago where a client had a particular issue that they needed to resolve arising from a contractual dispute. And then all of a sudden we were probably facing an urgent court application, which might have involved having to appear in court. And I'm not necessarily in the litigation space at the moment, which is going to court, etc. But that felt very exciting. And I remember talking to one of my junior lawyers, and it's like a bit of a Harvey and Mike situation that it does echo that. I mean, the reality is that what I do day to day is quite different. My day to day, based on the kind of areas of work that I practice in, is a lot of reading of documentation, considering emails, and providing advice and identifying clauses that might need changing, being on the phone with clients or lawyers on the other side if you're negotiating something. I work as a partner in a law firm, so I've got a team around me, so it's often guiding them through how we might approach a certain situation. From time to time, we'll have meetings. I mean, meetings are a little bit less common sometimes in face-to-face these days, but we'll have Teams or Zoom meetings with clients. I think if you were a lawyer that was practicing in litigation, which is, as I said, the practice of going to court, you'd probably be involved in very different duties, such as actually going to court or preparing for going to court, which is preparing the documentation that you need to file, such as affidavits or witness statements or pleadings. But yeah, where it's really different, I say, that is that things progress a lot slower. That doesn't mean we work slowly, but they progress a lot slower than what you would see on a TV show.
The progression of AI starting to enter the market. So what, Legora and Harvey are the two big
Yes.
ones. How are you starting to see AI impact the role of your juniors these days? And do you think that that's going to change in the future?
Yeah, I think it's a huge impact. I think it's probably the most revolutionary shift in the law in a very long time, probably since the more prominent introduction of computers. We are exploring the use of AI. I work for a firm called Thomsons, and we've developed our own in-house AI platform called Faye. And the idea is that Legora is there, Harvey's there. Our firm has explored a lot of these opportunities and tried to be it's a firm that takes very cautious steps in understanding the market very well before it takes that particular jump. And it decided to develop its own AI platform such that it would be very bespoke and tailored to how our firm operates. But coming to the actual use of AI, it's huge. For instance, we are constantly able to put questions into AI and get answers like that. It's
Yeah.
scary. It's scary. It's exciting, but it's also scary. The impact on juniors is that I think it will cut out a lot of the work that a lot of junior lawyers do cut their teeth on or have traditionally cut their teeth on. But I think what it will mean is that when younger lawyers start in the profession, so, graduates or whatever they may be, the kind of work that they're doing will be very different. We're testing our use of AI on a day-to-day basis now, constantly playing with it to understand it better, to feed more information to it, to improve it. But I think it's about junior lawyers are probably less able to learn skills through process-based work. For example, we need to file this application with this particular authority. Can you prepare the form? That might still need to be done because maybe you can't populate the form via AI. I don't know with Harvey and Legora. But for example, drafting a cover email, that's just a very perfunctory email, which is like, okay, here's attached this document, whatever. AI can do that very quickly. So you're not able to develop the skills in that regard, but you're probably going to develop lots of other skills, and it'll probably compel younger persons to develop skills of judgment and critical thinking a lot earlier and find alternate ways to do that. And that's what I'm really thinking about for the juniors in my team.
Interesting. There are with all roles. On the outside, people look at it and think, wow, it's shiny, great, Harvey Specter-ish. There's always pressures that exist. What are the pressures for you?
Yeah. It's a very challenging role. I wouldn't say that working as a lawyer is for the faint-hearted. And that I have experience working in smaller law firms. I have experience working in very large law firm environment, which is where I am today. Not to say that the pressures are the same across all of these institutions or types of institutions, but the pressure of law is about really getting things right and the consequences of not getting things right. So a lot of it is about accuracy of the work. And this is where AI is a little bit tricky where we are right now. We know it hallucinates, but it's not just that it hallucinates, it's about what that hallucination may be. Pre-AI, we would review documents and then the missing full stop or some kind of punctuation error could actually have a detrimental impact. And I'm not overstating it. I've seen these things happen, or a document not signed properly. So we might have prepared a whole document, an agreement, and negotiated for 3-4 months, given it to the client, said, yep, this is now ready for execution. The client goes to sign it, but they don't get the right parties to sign it, or they didn't get one person to sign it. And then it raises issues around whether this contract is even enforceable. Now, that's a slightly different example, but if you take AI, there's an example of how, if there is any inaccuracy in the document, what the consequences of that can be. Sometimes they can be catastrophic, sometimes they can be very minor. But I think that is the pressure, because sometimes, and especially as a younger lawyer, you don't really have the experience to know what is a catastrophic consequence and what's not, or what could lead to that. There's also things like financial pressures. As I said, I'm a partner, so I've got financial pressures. It's like running your own little business within the firm. You've got to be profitable, you have to generate revenue. Sometimes your clients might not be contacting you as much, so you've got to generate more work and find more clients, for instance. But also you've got to meet your target. So there's those kinds of pressures, and that can be really high. And then I think just the stress of complexity, like there's a lot, and things, how they conflict with each other. It's trying to navigate lots and lots of different things. So I think there's a lot of different types of pressure. And the final one that I think most lawyers would find the same is client pressures.
Absolutely.
So it's the client that calls you up at 7 a.m. in the morning and says, I'm really stressed about this situation. Can you get me an answer by this afternoon before the board meeting? And so then that places that immediacy of needing to get things done. And yeah, AI might help with some of that stuff today, but again, not being solely dependent on AI, you've got to address that client's concern. You've got to understand the fullness of the context. And that client might call you, put you in a situation where actually you shouldn't even be doing that, because you have to think about your overarching duties. It might be that the client's contacted you about a really pressing issue, but actually it's something that affects him or her, whereas it's not something that you should be advising on. And it might be that you need to take a step back and think about your ethical duties about what you do. And so, just coming back to the comment about TV law, is that TV law doesn't often think about ethical duties unless it's going to create some kind of dramatic tension for that particular TV episode.
Yeah. No, very, very, very good point. Most careers have a price or a cost to doing them, and that can manifest itself in various ways. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. I work at a large law firm that has often prioritized and fostered a culture of work-life balance, and ensuring that we recognize that everyone has other things that they want to get on with life, and that they want to go home and get on with that, whether it's looking after children, if you're a parent, or sporting or musical endeavors, or whatever it may be, just having fun. I think, though, it's inescapable in a legal career to not have that stress compound after a while. So I feel like sometimes the cost is being time poor, for me at least, and sometimes feeling pressured of not being able to get to everything that I need to on time. And that over time can build up. Sometimes I feel like a cliche today compared to when I was a lot younger and had more energy, where you say, oh, I don't have as much time for friends that I would like. And I have a very vast network of people that I'd love to spend time with, but I don't get the time to do that, because you've got to prioritize client needs. And, as people can get answers very quickly, even pre-AI, they can put something into Google and they think they can get their answer very quickly sometimes. We expect legal responses that require deep thinking to be just as quick. So I'd say that time is probably the greatest cost. You lose out on a lot of time, and there's always more that you could be doing in your career. And I think a sense of, as I said, stress can compound. I'm very good at handling stress, I'd say, in that I internalize a lot of it. But what that does, and as I say, getting older, I realize that stress lives within your body in ways that you sometimes don't realize, whether it's, for example, more active conditions or diseases or illnesses, obviously very on the serious end, like cancer and things like that. Or more commonly, I'd say chronic issues, for example, sleeplessness that then leads to something else, or, higher caffeine intake or bad diet and things like that. I generally have balanced a lot of these things well, but I think I do internalize stress, which means that like I feel like I've got bad skin. And so then that is, that can be annoying in many different ways. Obviously not as serious as other things that people can experience, but it's just a slight example that I'm comfortable to talk about, where it's your body reacting. So I think it's about the cost is not being able to take care of yourself as well. And I think that's something that a lot of lawyers could do better in thinking about.
Yeah. And that all sort of anchors back to time. Benefits. There's always upsides. So what is the upside in a legal profession?
Look, I think firstly, if you know that you want to do law and you're working as a lawyer and that's what you want to do, I think there's a great sense of fulfillment. I really go to work with a sense of fulfillment on most days. There are obviously difficult days, but it's that satisfaction that you're really exercising your brain and you're thinking about a lot of things. The brain is ticking. And I think that is something that is underrated and understated. That for me is very, very important because you could work in many careers where you don't necessarily get that. Of course, law can have a good financial trajectory as well. And that varies between different types of institutions that you work for. Obviously, there's things like community legal centers. There's things like working in the government as a lawyer. There's things like working in a law firm, and there's small law firms, mid-tier law firms, large law firms. They all vary. So they all have financial, benefits that vary based on that organization. But that's why I didn't want to make that the first point. The first point is around the fulfillment that you work. And our firm does a lot of pro bono work. And I'm one of the leads in the pro bono team. That's not my primary area of practice, but across the firm, it's something I focus on. And I know that doing the work from a pro bono perspective, which is giving free legal advice to organizations or individuals that need it. We used to have a very long-standing relationship with the homeless person's legal service. That gave a lot of fulfillment. And, when I would speak to some of the younger lawyers, that made a huge difference. Whether you suddenly allowed somebody to access Social Security benefits that they weren't otherwise able to access because of some legal issue that they faced, that is great. So I think that is very important. The other benefit is I think the law remains a profession that still enjoys a certain level of respect and springboards into other things. So, for instance, I'm currently on the board of Belvoir Street Theatre, which is a theatre company that I've had a connection with in other contexts because of the pursuits that I have outside of work. But I certainly know that my skills as a lawyer is something that would have attracted Belvoir Street Theatre to think about asking me to join that board. And so I think there's an element to which the law still offers you an ability to do other things that you might want to do, which is, contributing to the governance of a major theatre company in Australia, as one example.
Yeah, that's really interesting. 20 minutes goes really fast, and we're at the end. So I always ask people fast final 5 questions. So are you ready?
Go.
What has this career taught you about yourself?
That I am more patient and resilient than I would have thought.
What's one mistake or challenge that taught you a really important lesson?
I'd say COVID, that COVID period. I learned a lot about how you traverse through the ups and downs of life and ups and downs that happen around you and how you can still sail through.
What skill do you think will be really important for young people in the future?
One of many. I think the ability to think critically.
It's really important for a lot of careers.
Mm.
What excites you most about where the legal industry is heading?
I think there's a recalibration right now that we are stripping out the legal profession doing some of the process-driven work, which allows us to focus more on strategic work.
And if you were 20 again, what advice would you be giving yourself?
I'd say create balance in your life and learn about personal development at whatever age, at 20, so that you can recognize a lot about how to grow alongside having fun. Just to add to that, being 20 is about having fun, but I would have told myself to have engaged more in thinking about my personal growth alongside having fun, just to prime me as much as possible for the future that lies ahead.
That's some really good advice. So thank you very much for spending 20 minutes with me this morning, Arj. It's been really nice to have you on the show.
Thanks again, Jan. It's been really great to be on the show.